Hi everybody and welcome to 101 Mixpanel Basic Training. My name is Emiliano Arniani and I'm a Senior Solution Engineer at Mixpanel. Let's start with the agenda for today. So, first we'll be talking about the data model, how Mixpanel works and what is happening in the backend. Second, we will be talking about data taxonomy, how you can well manage and organize your events, properties, and so on. Finally, we will taste the spice of Mixpanel, how to get insights to improve your business based on data. Let's do it! As you all know, Mixpanel is a web application, so here we are. I will be selecting a sample dataset in order to show you how Mixpanel works. By the way, you all have access to the same sample datasets once you sign up with your organizational email. I will be selecting an e-commerce sample dataset because I guess all of us knows how an e-commerce works. All of us did at least one purchase on Amazon or in AliExpress. So I'm selecting this sample dataset and here we are. So first let's talk about how Mixpanel works. So every application today has different users. Now every user is performing some action in your application. And here we are. I'm taking an example of a specific user in the application, in this case an e-commerce application, let's say Amazon. So what we can see here is that we are registering and seeing all the actions that this specific user did. We call these actions events. Now, it's not only about actions, it's also about metadata, more information about that specific event or action. So if we go below, for example, we see that this user, he just did a product view. But if we go inside to the metadata, we see that we can see from which specific page he made that product view, from which specific region, from which specific device, which type of brand and category of the specific item he wanted to see, he was looking at, and even the price of that specific item, in this case, $73. We also have what is called user properties, information about the user. For example, from where he's coming from, in this case, we are talking about someone from Japan, when he created the account in Amazon, which device he used, and all the information you want to add. So Mixpanel is basically joining and mapping this user properties information with all this metadata from each of the actions in order to do what we call behavioral analysis, in order to improve the conversions in a specific funnel or flow, or of course to decrease the drop-off. Now, something very important, and this is related also to the data model. Mixpanel is not a data collector. We are not collecting or watching all the data happening in your application. What you need to do in Mixpanel is to send all the data that you want to see in Mixpanel, but you need to define specifically each of the events, actions, and properties / metadata that you want to see here. That's the reason why Mixpanel is fully FedRAMP and GDPR compliance. That's very important. Now, before we start doing some behavioral analysis and showing you the different insights we can get, I want to talk about the data taxonomy. In Mixpanel, you have a way to look at your specific event / actions and metadata per each event in what is called the Lexicon. If we go to data management and the Lexicon, you can see here all the unique events you are sending to Mixpanel. If I'm opening this, I can also see all the properties I defining to see in order to then do those mappings and joins I want to do for the analysis. As you can see here, we have properties you are defining and some Mixpanel properties that we are collecting, a few of them. So this is very important because remember, having a very clean and organized data taxonomy will be directly impact on how much and how granular your analysis can be. So make sure to have a very clear data taxonomy. You can also use Lexicon in order to reorganize the data. For example, if I want to change the display name of an event, if I don't want to have the same name sending from the backend to Mixpanel, I want to change it on the UI, I can do it here. And I can also add a description about this event for new users that are coming and don't know how the data model is. You can also take a look into the event if you want. Here you can filter by specific events, do some analysis on period of time, and select a specific event and see what is happening there. And then you also have the section of the users. If you want to filter by specific users, for example, if I want to look at users using a specific operating system, for example Android, have that list and continue filtering. Now let's go to the spicy stuff of Mixpanel. Let's start with the macro view. We call it boards, but it's like dashboard. It's just another name. As you can see, here I have all the list of dashboards I create or someone shared with me. Let's start with one of them. I'm selecting a company KPI dashboard. So as you can see here, I decide which specific report to embed on this company KPI board. So we have here some insight report. In a moment we will talk about each of the reports, don't worry. We have some funnels, another insight report over time, we have some flows, and so on. Each of those reports we can modify. I can enter and change anything I want, are fully editable. What else we can do with dashboards? We can filter dashboard by time. Let's say that I want to see the same report or the same analysis but in a different period of time. Instead of 30 days, maybe 7 days. But we can also filter by specific properties of users or events. For example, let's say that they want to see the same information, but only with people that belongs, users, right? Users that have an Android device. So now I'm seeing the same reports just for the Android users. We can also share dashboard, we can favorite dashboard, and you can also digest dashboard. What this means by digest is that you can define a specific period of time, let's say every day, every Monday morning, send this dashboard automatically to some Slack channel or to me privately or by email. Now we have two ways of creating dashboard. The first way is to have a blank dashboard. So I will basically define specifically which specific report, text, videos, images I want to have on my macro view. But you can also use templates. Mixpanel already defines 6 different templates. So if I want to analyze, for example, marketing campaigns, so marketing APIs, I can select these marketing APIs, start this template, and Mixpanel will ask me some questions. For example, what is my activation event, right, for my users? Activation could be make a purchase in an e-commerce dataset. And then what is the conversion event? It can be, for example, product view. So based on the data we are giving to Mixpanel, Mixpanel will combine this data and do some analysis for you, create some reports for you, as you can see here. To tell you the truth, by experience, my customers are starting with a template. From that, they are doing modifications. Remember that you can move any of those reports to one side to another side. You can edit those if we want to change anything. You can change the size. Let's say that I don't want OS anymore, so I can filter by OS, and so on, right? So I can just not give OS, right? Something like this. Great. And then I can save, and that report will be saved, of course, on the template. Now let's talk about the 4 different reports you can embed into the boards in Mixpanel. We have insights, funnels, flows, and retentions. Let's talk about each of them. Let's start with insights. In Insight, you can define a specific event you want to analyze and a specific action. For example, in this e-commerce sample dataset, we can ask to Mixpanel to give us the purchase completeness of unique users over time. So we can see here the last 30 days, there are some spikes that we can analyze and understand why this is happening. Maybe that was a Black Friday and that's the reason why people actually make more purchases. You can also change the different countings of how you want to see that specific event. For example, I don't want the uniqueness of the users, I want total events. Total events means that if a user on a specific day is performing more than one purchase, we are of course duplicating and counting as many purchases that users did. We are not counting about the users, we are counting about total events. And then we have of course some more complex methodologies of counting. We can count by sessions, we can also do some calculations on the fly with a specific property, and so on. We can also filter on the users that we want to analyze here in this specific section. For example, if I want to see only those users with a specific payment method, for example, Apple Pay, I can just filter this event over time, this line, only for those that are paying with Apple Pay. Or what I can do, I can ask to Mixpanel to split by different segments. Let's come back to the case of the payment method, this specific graph. So now we can analyze if there is any correlation or if there is any spike depending on the payment method we are analyzing. If it's Apple Pay, PayPal, credit card, and so on. You can also use Insight to compare two different events or more. So for example, if I want to see if there is any correlation between product added and purchase completed, we see that looks like there is a positive correlation between those two. If I want to go further, I can create a formula and analyze the ratio between those two events. So we can go to metrics, create a formula. Now we will create a new formula. The formula will be A divided by B, the ratio of purchase against product view. And then we create it. We will hide, of course, those two events to not bother us in the view. And now we see the formula. We see the ratio between those two events we select. In Insights, we can also play a lot with the period of time. If we want to do the same analysis of the last 7 days, yesterday or today, we can change to hours instead of days. We can also change the visualizations. For example, let's say that I want to analyze, again, purchase, the purchase event, but now I want to see the last 30 days, the aggregation of those days, and to see how many purchases I had, 5,000 something. And I can also break down, let's say, again, by the payment methods. But I can add as many breakdowns you want. For example, I want also to see the shipping method, right? So now I'm grouping by the payment methods and then the shipping methods. So maybe I can discover some insights from all these discoveries. I can also compare to a different period of time. For example, if I want to compare it against the previous month and to see if there is any increase or decrease, or I can compare it to a specific segment. For example, if the segment or the standardization on the shipping method is express shipping, I can standardize that express shipping to the others methodologies of shippings. Now let's talk about the second type of report, funnels. So in funnels, you will need to define specific steps that you want to analyze. For example, in the case of an e-commerce, I want to see how many people is making a purchase, but the steps will be, for example, product view, cart, added, and then making a purchase. Those are the 3 steps, those 3 actions are the ones that I want to analyze, and I want to see how many users are dropping off on that specific journey that I'm creating, or the ones that are converting. So let's take that example. So product view. So a user enters to the app, he's viewing a product, then he's adding that product into the cart, viewing that cart, and then finally making a purchase. So you can add as many steps you want in Mixpanel, there is no limitation about that. So now what we have is the percentage of users that are converting on a criteria that we define. In this case, the criteria is defined by 7 days. You can define other time period, or for example, in a specific session, I want to see how many users are doing this journey in one session before they log out. So we can see the percentage of users converting. And also what we can see is as well the percentage of users dropping off. We can also use the filters and breakdowns as we did before. So we can also break down and split it to analyze different conversions depending on the segment. Same as we did before with Insights. So for example, if I want to see and to split by the different brands of the products people are purchasing, I can just select cart, brand, and I can see if there is any specific product generating more or less conversions. We can play a lot with these funnels. For example, I can also analyze the time to convert. So how much time in average it's taking to people, depending on the brand of the item, to make that purchase, to actually be in that funnel, to complete that funnel. So we can see that Puma, for example, is 5.6 hours, Nike 3.7, and so on. Because it's not only about how many people is converting, also how quick they are doing it. Let's talk about the third report, flows. Now, we use flows when we want to discover how our users are taking a specific path on the application. It's a kind of a exploratory analysis, right? It's not like funnel where we define the steps. Here it's more like, okay, I have this step, let's say making a purchase, and I'm not sure how users are actually coming to that purchase from which specific action and what are doing after that purchase. So what we can do here is we can ask to Mixpanel, okay, give me the purchase event. We see the purchase event. Right now we have 3 steps after, so those are the 3 steps or actions that people is doing in the majority. But we can also ask to Mixpanel to give us, let's say, 3 steps before. You can add as many steps you want. So now we see the purchase completed, and what you can see here is that people usually start with the checkout start, they do some checkout start, and then making a purchase. In this case, take into account that it's an e-commerce, so maybe people is trying to check out a start many times because they find that they want another item that they didn't include into the cart and so on. In that case, you can use, for example, collapse repeated events in order to just analyze the different actions user took before or after that purchase completed. So we see that people is doing product view, then another product, makes sense, they are just watching a lot of product, and then checking out the start, and then finally making a purchase. Once they do the purchase, the majority is again starting a new checkout, product view, and so on. Others are signing up, maybe because they have a discount if they sign up for the next purchase, and so on. So this is flows. We can play a lot with flows. For example, I can expand again my specific property. So maybe depending on the payment method, people is having a different journey. So now I'm expanding by the property called payment method. And Mixpanel will give me the different journeys depending on the payment method people is taking. So we have credit card, PayPal, Apple Pay, and so on. So maybe we can discover that some of the payment methods are different. Maybe that sign up, for example, with the discount, it's only happening with the credit card and not with the PayPal, because the credit card is doing those discounts. The last report is retention. Now, retention is a little bit more complex. So here we can only select 2 different events. So the idea of retention is to first ask yourself in your business, what means for you or for a user in your application to be retained on the application? For example, if we talk about e-commerce, probably be retained is related again to making a purchase. If I'm making a purchase and then I'm making another purchase, I'm a user that probably is retained because I like to purchase more. That's the whole objective of an e-commerce, people making a purchase. So what we can do here is we have 2 different methodologies of calculating the retention. One is called on, the other one is called on or after. I will start with an on or after. So what we do here is the following. As you can see below, we have a matrix depending on hours. So here we talk about 0 to 24 hours, 24 hours to 48 hours, 48 hours to 72 hours, and so on. And the idea is the following. A user will be retained in those specific buckets if that user made a purchase, and then, in this case, for example, in 0 to 24 hours, he make a purchase, and the next 0 to 24 hours make another purchase. So that user will be retained on less than 1 day. Now, as I said before, we have on or after methodology. On or after methodology means that if we consider a user coming back a few hours later, let's say 48 to 72 hours, let's say here, we will consider that user retained not only here, but also in day 1 and less than 1 day. So basically, we are aggregating, right, those users. Basically, this depends a lot on the business case you are using. If we talk, for example, about TikTok, so TikTok probably don't want to use the on or after, they will use the on. Why? Because on will be only considering to be retained the day that he came back. For example, if someone is making a purchase now, and then is making a purchase 48 to 72 hours after, he will be retained in this bucket only, right? Day number 2. So, and of course, the first one they make the first purchase, but he will not be retained on day 1. So now the question is when I use on or after. So again, depends in your use case. So if we talk about TikTok, we consider a user be retained in TikTok if he's all the time, every even minutes, not hours. If every minute he's just scrolling or posting something. If we talk about, for example, banks, will be the opposite. In banks, probably we will use on or after. Why? Because if a user will be retained when he send money to a different account or when he extract cash from an ATM, we don't do that every day. Now, I'm not doing that every day. I'm not taking cash from an ATM every day. But if I'm doing it today and 2 weeks after, I probably retain on the bank also all the days in the middle, right? Because why that is happening? Because I will not extract every day cash from the ATM, right? So depending on the use case, we will use one methodology or the other methodology. Then you can do the same as we did before, right? You can use filters, you can use breakdowns to see if there is any more retained people depending on the payment methods, for example. So now we will split it, and we see that in this case, for example, the first few days, people coming on or paying with Apple Pay are more retained than people paying with a credit card. But over time, for some reason, Apple Pay, the people retain after a few days, after I think the day number 15, for some reason is going down. That's something that you need to analyze why this is happening. So those are the reports. We also have advanced reports. You can select here in this specific section, signal, impact, or experiment. We will not talk about those right now. What I want to talk about, because it's very important, is cohorts. So in Mixpanel, we can create cohorts in order to break down, let's say, by cohorts or to filter by cohorts. So let's say that I want to create a cohort of people like users buying with Apple Pay, and for example, and Puma, a specific brand of an item. So what I can do here is I can select an event and I can ask to Mixpanel, give me the last 30 days of all those users that has a specific payment method. I am adding a filter. The payment method will be, in this case, Apple Pay. And also, I want those people that make a purchase of a brand equal to Puma, right? So a brand equal to Puma. I'm selecting Puma. And as you can see here below, we have 134 users in this cohort. So I can create this cohort. And what I can do with this cohort is, as I mentioned before, we can use all the 4 reports we talked before. And then what we can do is, let's say I want to see product view, but I want to break down by a specific cohort. Now I want to break down by the ones that we create. Users buying with Apple Pay and brand equal to Puma. So we add the breakdown. So what we are doing here is we are analyzing not a specific event, but we are analyzing a specific split of or segmentations of users. So here we have the people actually buying with Apple Pay, brand equal to Puma, and this is how they are performing about the product view. And those are all the users, and those one, of course, are the ones that not belongs to this specific cohort, right? Great, so we can do a lot of things. By the way, Mixpanel can be very, very complex. There are a lot of things to learn and to play with. Of course, this is a basic training, but any question you have, you know where to find me. My name is Emiliano Arniani. You can contact me by LinkedIn. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed. Bye-bye.